That was good, y'all. We're back with another team preview here. You're on the Justin Henry Show. We are going over all 32 teams. If you haven't checked out the other team previews, go and check them out. They're all time-stamped. You can check out your favorite players at the exact time of the show, and then also just get an overview of what it looks like heading into this upcoming season for real and fantasy football, all right? But we're going to go over the New York Jets today, and if it's your first time here, don't make it the last. Make sure you drop a sub, hit the like button. This Jets team should be much better this year. Last year, heading into the year, there was thoughts that this team could be a playoff team, and then Aaron Rodgers got hurt to start the year. So we saw a lot of Zach Wilson, some Trevor Siemian, a lot of ugly from this Jets team. And hopefully with Aaron Rodgers healthy, this thing can be much improved, okay? So let's start off with the quarterback position. And Aaron Rodgers, obviously, first series of the game, tore his ACL. Terrible news for not just fantasy, but just for the Jets in general, for him. He was coming from Green Bay, expecting to have a big impact for the Jets. It didn't happen last season, and this season should be a redemption arc for him, not just from his Green Bay days, but then also coming off the Achilles, man. He's going to want to have a lot to prove this year. He threw for 695 yards in his last season with the Packers. So obviously different setup than the last time we've seen him on the field in the entire season with the Green Bay Packers. There they had a bunch of receivers who were young, dropping passes. He was getting a little annoyed with that. They had just moved Devontae Adams. So a different receiving core. Now he gets young receiver in Garrett Wilson. The team has made some other adjustments here to make Aaron Rodgers happy. This should be a different scenario. Now, he's 40 years old, so it's not like we can expect prime Aaron Rodgers out there running and looking super mobile, obviously coming off the Achilles. He's supposedly fully healthy, should be at 100%. Now, where things get interesting is, can he stay healthy? Will he still have the arm strength? I'm sure the arm will still be live, but will it be the same Aaron Rodgers type arm that we're accustomed to seeing? And will this team protect their star quarterback by using their star running back, Breece Hall, in the run game? I think Aaron Rodgers will be fine this year. And, for fantasy purposes, he's been, mid-tier quarterback too the last couple of times we've seen him out there. And I think that's where he's going to land ADP-wise, should be around there. Now, he'll need to have the touchdowns. Obviously, I don't think this is MVP Aaron Rodgers will be getting, but with the cast of receivers that he has in the ground game, I do see Aaron Rodgers still having, a pretty consistent year if he can stay healthy. So are we getting 4,000-yard Aaron Rodgers? I don't think so. But can we get 25 touchdown, 30 touchdown Aaron Rodgers? I think there's a possibility with that, all right? Aaron Rodgers, mid-tier QB2, has a little bit of upside. You might be paying for name value at this point when it comes to Rodgers. All right, next up, let's talk about it. Breece Hall. Breece Hall finished as the RB2 last year. And this is coming off, the season before, he had just come off an injury, and we were worried about, like, can he perform at the level? And dude played crazy last season, especially in the end of the season. 100 fantasy points in the last 3 games of last season. In 4 of his last 5 games, finished as the running back 3 or higher. And after week 12, we had seven games out of the 9, 7 out of the 9 with 6 targets or more. Crazy. And I know we didn't have like Zach Wilson there. It was like we had a different quarterback situation last year. I'm not sure Aaron Rodgers goes to him as much in the passing game, but when you got something that works, you got to keep your foot on the gas. And I still expect him to be a big part of this passing game. Last year in the run game, 994 yards rushing, so just under 1,000 yards rushing, and then 5 touchdowns. So, and then 76 catches as a running back, 591 yards, 4 touchdowns. So, yes, Breece will be amazing again this year and in contention to be the number 1 running back in all of fantasy. He's going to have a lot on his shoulders this year, and I think there's a good chance that he's going to be at least a top 3 back this season. So you'll have to draft him early. He's being discussed right now in the conversation right after Christian McCaffrey. So we got Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. Some people got Saquon Barkley, like myself. Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs. Some people have Kyron in there. Like, there's a bunch that are in. They could possibly be the RB1 next season. I think Breece Hall is one of the safer of those options, especially with Aaron Rodgers being healthy for the full season. this is the time to get him. And if you have him right now in your dynasty leagues, be excited. So Breece Hall should be phenomenal again this season. One of the concerns was that this team was going to, in the draft, they brought in one of the more high-profile names at running back in Braelon Allen, 6'1", 235 at running back. So this might just be an injury prevention thing. To me, this looks like a depth move. Even though he was great at Wisconsin, I think he would need a Hall injury in order to be relevant in the next 3 seasons. So if you took him in Dynasty, that's really the only opportunity you have. I don't really think he's going to be anything more than just a complimentary back when Breece needs a breather. So Braelon Allen, if you had him or drafted him or liked the name, you took him before he was actually drafted. I don't see a whole lot of upside here unless there's an injury, unfortunately. So for me, he's purely a depth piece. Where things get interesting is the receiving core. Garrett Wilson, we got to talk about it. He was the wide receiver 26 last year. So if you took Garrett Wilson last year, likely you took him in the top 10, just anticipating that Aaron Rodgers was going to be the quarterback for the whole season. Obviously, he got hurt, and so we saw a lot of scatter production out of Garrett Wilson. 95 catches, 1,042 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So the number that we were expecting a lot more out of was the touchdowns. I think he'll for sure get better yardage, but it's not going to be anything like 1,500, 2,000 yards. We're not looking at like the wide receiver one in fantasy type production. We're not looking at lead the league in yardage production out of Garrett Wilson. But where I think the biggest improvement will probably be is in the touchdown area. We know the connection that Rodgers had with Devontae Adams, and we know Rodgers likes throwing, that fade route in the red zone. He loves it. And so I think Garrett Wilson, we saw 3 touchdowns out of him. If he was double-digit touchdowns this year, it would not shock anybody. So I think that would be the major stark improvement. I still expect a top 10 season from Garrett Wilson with Rodgers. I think you're going to get him at a discount this year, hopefully, right? When it comes to ADP, we'll have to see what it looks like as the summer goes on. But if Garrett Wilson is anything outside of the top 10 when it comes to receivers off the board, I think we're getting a value there. So Garrett Wilson, a player to monitor for ADP. If he gets a little too high, I'm probably going to be fading him. If he's anything outside the top 10, he's going to be a recommended draft. All right. So for him, should be a career season this year with Rodgers. I think a lot of people are anticipating it. He got some help at the receiver position to take a little pressure off of him. The team signed Mike Williams this offseason. So last year, only player was there was Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb, his Packers old buddies, right? Aaron Rodgers, Packers old buddies. You add in a receiver of Mike Williams' caliber, this offense becomes a little bit more interesting. The only thing with Mike Williams is that he's had trouble staying healthy. That's been his biggest knock. And I would also say one of the knocks on him is that he has big games and then he has duds. So he's been a little inconsistent throughout his career. But this is giving Aaron Rodgers a better version of what Allen Lazard is, essentially. And he's career-wise, he's always been around a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. The big problem for Mike Williams is he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Tore his ACL last year, is expected to be back around July. So hopefully he's able to be full speed by the time the season comes. And for those worried about ACL, that affects a lot more of your shorter routes. Mike Williams is a big deep ball guy. And I know Aaron Rodgers is going to give him some chances. So will he be a value? I think so. Will he be inconsistent and risky? Very much so. So in your best ball leagues, this could be a player in your best ball leagues you're taking later. Maybe you're getting some value out of it. But in your redraft leagues, just make sure he's not being drafted in like the top 30 to 45 receivers. We'll talk about his value as the summer goes on. And we need to make sure he's back on the field by the time the season starts. So Mike Will just signed, obviously, with the Chargers, played a big role there, especially when Keenan Allen was hurt. I think Mike Williams will be a good starter for this team, for our fantasy team. So he'll be somewhat inconsistent, should be a flex option throughout the entire season. All right, and I talked about Allen Lazard. I don't want to spend any time on him. He's probably going to be relegated to a backup, to being Mike Williams' backup. I think he'd be the 4th option in this passing game. The player that got drafted and that I think a lot of people are interested in is Malachi Corley, 3rd-round pick. And, one of the things that's been thrown around about Corley is that he's Debo light, right? So obviously good yardage after the catch, has the ability to get downhill even after the catch. So to me, this seems more like a Randall Cobb type player. He's 5'11", 215. And I get the Debo comparisons, but to me, Randall Cobb was a lot of the same. I just see more Randall Cobb than I see Debo Samuel in this offense for the Jets. So be careful with comparisons. And then you hear one specific name, you hear Debo, you're thinking, all right, that could be like a top 5 guy. Corley's going to be a steal. Think about the usage. Garrett Wilson is the clear lead dog of this passing attack. And yes, Corley's going to have a role, but anticipate somewhere in like the 4 to 6 target range, not anything like Deebo Samuel or we're getting 100-yard games consistently, okay? So just be cautious with that. He's been rooming with Aaron Rodgers, staying at his house over the offseason, so it's a good plus sign to know that he's paired up with the quarterback and they're locked in sync. Just be careful about the comparisons and expecting too much out of CORLEY, who I think will be a fantastic player, but for fantasy, just don't let it overhype you, all right? And then the last player to talk about is Tyler Conklin, who was the tight end 18 last year, had a pretty good season. He's been the tight end 16, 18, like somewhere around there over the last 3 years. He set a career high in yardage last season, but RODGERS, he likes to go to his receivers, and there's a reason why they're drafting receivers, signing receivers. He's going to go to his receivers more often than his tight end. Will he have a couple good games? Yes, but he'll be very inconsistent for your fantasy team. So even if you're in like a deeper 14, 16-man league, this is a player I'd probably stay away from. You could do better at tight end with more upside, I would say, season-long wise. Conklin will have some games, but it'll be spiked production. Just be wary of that, all right? So that does it for the Jets. If there's any other players you want me to go over, drop it in the comments. I talked about pretty much all the redraft options that there are, all the way up to about 16-team leagues. So if there's any other players you want from the Jets, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.